Logitech's 4 Mac series has always felt to me like it's designed specifically to take advantage of people. This is not always the case though, as there are some clear benefits for some of the Mac products, which we'll discuss soon, but there are other products, like the latest MX Master 4 mouse, which the 4 Mac version just seems, quite frankly, like a scam. Now, I made a short video about this, encouraging people to just stick to the original version. The comment section had some feedback, including a critique that I didn't quite go deep enough in my analysis. It was a short video after all. So I wanted to make a full long-form video trying to answer once and for all whether there is any difference between regular Logitech products and their 4 Mac counterparts. Now, I've got 3 different leads that I want to investigate with this mouse specifically, and I even went out and bought the 4 Mac version to help figure it all out. Now, quick disclaimer, Logitech did send the regular MX Master 4 to me for review, though I bought this new one with my own money. Now, a company sending a product to me never entitles them to have any input in my video process, but as you can imagine, they definitely didn't have any input on this video. All right, let's start by discussing some of the real, obvious 4 Mac differences. Some 4 Mac keyboards, like this MX Mechanical Mini, feature slight differences in the key layouts. While the regular version may be capable of doing all the same things via software, the Mac-focused layout may match what a regular Apple user is familiar with on their other devices. For example, they may have a function row that matches the current generation MacBook, or they may have the backspace key labeled as delete. Other keycap markings may change as well, where the bottom row is typically universal on the regular model, showing both the Command Option and Alt windows. The Mac model will typically just have the Mac markings. This is cosmetic, but nice if you only use Mac products. Another cosmetic change is colors. Logitech attempted to make their Mac products match closely to the current Mac lineup so that your mouse or keyboard would blend right into the rest of your devices. They also use familiar names like Space Gray, for example. Inside of the box, some 4 Mac products have differences as well. For years now, Macs have typically not had any USB-A ports, so getting a USB-A to C charging cable in the box didn't really make much sense. As a result, 4 Mac products often featured USB-C to C cables, a premium upgrade compared to the cable in the regular boxes. So as you can see, at its best, the 4 Mac lineup can legitimately offer you a more Mac-focused design with the features that you want so that you can have the best experience with all of your Apple devices. But this hasn't been the feeling on every product labeled 4 Mac. The first time this caught my eye was with the Logitech Lift ergonomic mouse. This mouse has a 4 Mac version that is available in off-white, which is the same off-white as the regular model. It didn't have any Mac-specific features. It was powered by a AA battery, so there was no difference in the charging cable, and there was one very specific omission. The regular model included a Logibolt USB receiver in the box, something that retails for $15 on its own. The Mac version did not. Both mice were completely capable of working with the Logibolt, but I assume that the logic was, once again, that Mac users don't have USB-A, so including a receiver didn't really make any sense. You'd expect then that the product would be $15 or so cheaper, right? But no, it was not. It was the exact same price as the regular one. So if you're getting an identical product with less value in accessories for the same price, that feels like a scam. So that's been the latest on this situation for a while now. Some products have legitimate changes, some not so much. But that situation changed with the release of the MX Master 4. The MX Master 4 is the latest version of a very popular mouse, the king of productivity tools for many, many people out there. It has its flaws, sure, which I discussed partially in my initial video on the mouse, but it is still a great tool. This time around, Logitech made 2 changes which disrupted our previous understanding of the whole 4 Mac situation. First, they removed the charging cable entirely from both boxes. No charging cable in any box meant that the more premium C to C cable was no longer a differentiator for the 4 Mac. Second, they switched the Logibolt receiver from USB-A to USB-C. So now the argument that USB-A isn't on Macs is gone. So then did they include the receiver in the box for the 4 Mac version? No, they still omitted it. What about color? Was there at least any difference there? Kind of. They offer 2 different versions of the 4 Mac compared to 3 different versions of the regular model. The 4 Mac ones are slightly lighter in the area of the main left and right clicks, but otherwise they appear to be completely identical. So where does that leave us? In my mind, it is clear that there is no excuse to exclude the USB-C receiver this time around. And since there was no charging cable and no material change in color, this sits firmly in the scam territory, unless there is potentially more to it. Now, this all comes down to one sentence on Logitech's website. MX Master 4 for Mac is a high-performance mouse optimized for macOS and iPadOS. The question is, what the heck does optimized for Mac actually mean? Now, I've used a regular MX Master 3S mouse with a MacBook for years and I've never had an issue. I've also been using the new MX Master 4 with a MacBook and also had no issue. Other people are in the same boat. Some people do legitimately have connectivity issues, but there doesn't seem to be any specific strong correlations between the model of the mouse that you're using and the specific operating system that you use, at least not one that I've been able to come across amid all of my research on this topic. So this is why I finally purchased this 4 Mac model and why I want to investigate the 3 leads that I have for how this mouse may be optimized for Mac. Well, it's really 2 main leads and then kind of a Hail Mary if it comes to it. So let's just get this thing opened up so that we can try to figure it out. All right, now that I've got both of them opened up, the first thing I'll say is that physically they are identical. The shape is the same, the materials are the same, everything seems to be the same. Really, the only noticeable difference is if you look at the bottom of the mouse. On the one hand, you're gonna see MX Master 4, interestingly with a Bluetooth logo and also a Logibolt receiver logo. However, on the Mac version, you're just gonna see that it says MX Master 4 for Mac. It doesn't have either of those logos, even though it is compatible with both of those connection types. So that's kind of just one interesting note there. But if you're ever trying to figure out which one is which, then you know that it's going to be labeled for Mac on the one. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to tell unless you have them side by side and can look for that very slight color difference between 2 of them that are the same color. Otherwise, they're the same. So lead number 1 that I have is taking the website at face value and seeing if I can detect anything at all in the setup or use of this mouse that indicates that it is truly optimized for Mac. I don't have much faith in this, but I'm gonna try. So I have a MacBook just off camera here, MacBook. I'm gonna record my screen, go through the setup process, and see if there is any sort of noticeable difference between the 2. So one interesting note off the bat is that the first time I open up the MX Master 4 for Mac, it doesn't take me through the little tutorial that sets up things for you and tells you about the different features, which it did when I did it the first time on the MX Master 4. So it's definitely the same tutorial on both mice. There's no differences there, or it would have kicked it off. Just to be sure, I think if you go into settings, you can launch feature tour. Yes, okay. So we'll jump through this. We have our gesture controls. We have our haptic sense panel. You can set the haptic sense intensity, got the actions ring, different profiles for applications. It's gonna pull in ones that I use. Okay, so there's nothing different there. If I go through and look at the different features, there's no different features here. They're gonna look exactly the same here compared to on the other one. One thing that I just thought of is let's look at the firmware. So we've got the latest firmware 27.0.15. So if we go now over to our MX Master 4 settings, 27.0.15. That's a pretty good indication that they are probably the same internal mouse because they're running the exact same firmware version. If they were running different firmware that might be optimizing for Mac, then there'd probably be 2 different versions, a Mac version of the software and a Windows version of the software. I don't know firmware perfectly, so maybe you guys can correct me in the comments, but that would be what I would look for. So I'm not seeing anything in any of the settings here that actually makes it seem like there is any sort of a difference. So Pointer speed, 50%. This is all just defaults. So let me just go back to my regular MX Master 4, restore to default settings. So now we're comparing apples to apples. So if we go here, 50%, okay, so everything is the same. So now let's just see if I feel any sort of difference. I mean, I got nothing. I don't feel any difference. Go to Logitech's website here to see if scrolling feels any different. This is scrolling with the Mac version. This is scrolling with the regular version. There is a smooth scrolling feature that you can turn on or off. MX Master 4 regular one defaults it to off. Yeah, they both default smooth scrolling to off, and the scrolling feels the same. I mean, you can jump around really quickly with the mag speed wheel. You can go nice and slowly. It really all feels the same. You've got the action ring, you've got the haptics, you've got the side scroll wheel that feels the same. Like everything here feels the same. So as far as I am concerned, I don't know of any difference. Like I said, I haven't had any connectivity issues with the Mac, with the regular version on Mac. Some people claim that they have. I'm not saying that you are wrong, but I'm saying that it might be something else other than the mouse. So let's jump to lead number 2. For lead number 2, I'm looking at iPadOS. Now, I'm not sure how many people really use a mouse like this with an iPad. I just have a very basic old iPad that I use for workouts and not much else. But I know that people out there are power users with iPad Pros that might legitimately have this as a need. Now, there was one person in my comments that mentioned that most mice do not natively support the use of the forward and back buttons on iPadOS. So it's possible that optimizing for Mac might have something to do with things like that, making those buttons work correctly on an iPad. So maybe this one works. Let's try. So I did actually try this earlier on my original MX Master 4. And so we can pair it here. It did not work on the MX Master 4, the regular one. I just unboxed this one, so I am curious to see whether it works. I had never actually even done this, but you can see the little cursor here if you use a mouse in iPadOS, which is actually kind of cool. I still don't fully know how to use it, so I am just gonna jump over here. But now you can see you can scroll around, you can click on things if we wanna look at mice, and then we wanna look at, interestingly, I love that the top 6 mice doesn't include the new MX Master 4, so we'll click on the MX Master 3S. Go into this page. All right, so now I want to go back. So I click the back button and nothing happens. So we don't go anywhere. Interestingly, it looks like it is actually behaving as a regular like left click, because if I click on one of these pictures with the back button, it clicks in, and so I can use that as my regular mouse click. But yeah, so the forward and back buttons are not behaving like forward and back buttons with the regular MX Master 4. So let's see if we do the same now for the MX Master 4 for Mac. We pair that. Just to avoid any confusion, we'll turn that one off. All right, there we go. So we are connected up there. You can see, once again, the cursor moving around. So let's jump back over here and say, let me look at the travel case. That opened up a new tab. Let's say go keyboard sleeve. All right, so we jump to the keyboard sleeve page. Now we're gonna try, once again, pushing that back button. Nothing. So same thing here, it does not do anything. The other buttons, the gesture button, the action button, none of those worked. Scrolling and clicking works. You can right click, you can left click. So once again though, if we do forward and back buttons are regular clicks, and so they jump right in. One other thing that I saw on this front is that in accessibility settings, if we try going there and then we go to pointer control, apparently there are some additional settings that come up with some mice. I don't get it on either one of these. Hey, future Cameron, interrupting here real quick. You might already know this, or you might have noticed it on the screen at the very bottom. There's a little fine print that says button customizations are available in assistive touch settings. If you go there and your mice are connected with Bluetooth, then you'll actually be able to select them, press one of the buttons, and then program it to a certain function. However, it doesn't actually let you do forward and back. It's got other functionality related to the iPad, so you still can't do forward and back with the mice regardless here. And also, this doesn't really change my conclusion in any way, shape, or form, but I wanted to make sure I called it out so that you didn't have to let me know in the comments. So back to the video. So I'm not sure if I'm missing something, if it's this version of an older iPad versus more of a Pro model, something else. So there could be something that I'm missing here. But overall, if that is potentially one of the answers, forward and back buttons on iPadOS, it's not any more optimized on the 4 Mac version than it is on the regular one. My final lead is admittedly a bit of a Hail Mary. It was going to depend a lot on the outcomes of the previous 2 leads, which didn't really give us much of anything. I hope you feel like I gave them a fair shot. But the only thing that I can think to do now is to just open these mice up and see if there is any sort of hardware differences inside. This obviously doesn't cover anything that makes them different from a software perspective, but I feel like we would have been able to detect something. There would have been a different firmware version. There would have been something going on if there was a difference. So the only thing I can think to do now is to break out a screwdriver, open these up, and look if there is any sort of differences that I can find for what's actually inside of the regular versus the Mac version. This is not my forte, so this might not be the most elegant thing, but we're gonna do it live. We're gonna see what happens. Now, this does highlight the fact that they have made it substantially easier to take this mouse apart, given that there are exposed screws on the bottom, which is a great addition compared to before, where you had to remove the feet in order to get to the screws in order to take it apart. So if you wind up having to replace a battery, if you wind up having a situation where you need to replace the switches, anything like that, you can now get to it a whole lot easier. And so that is one of the big improvements in my mind in terms of repairability on this mouse compared to the previous versions. All right, this last one is more set down compared to all the others. So you might need a slightly different screwdriver in order to take care of this last screw. It also is slightly longer. So you do have one longer screw at the bottom compared to all of the others. All right, now that I've gotten that done, I'm gonna unscrew the other one so that we can sort of do this at the same time. Quick shout out to Linus Tech Tips, lttstore.com. If you wanna pick up this screwdriver, I legitimately use it for everything around the house. I changed pretty much every single light switch in my house when I moved into my new home because it had old school ones rather than the rockers, and I wanted rockers plus some smart switches, and the LTT screwdriver did it all. So it's not just good for working on computers, it is really good for a lot of different things. Not sponsored, but happy to be, Linus. Feel free to reach out. Okay, moment of truth. We're gonna hopefully be able to simply pull this up. Does feel like maybe there is a clip of some kind in the front. I have not seen anyone else do this, and so I feel like a little bit of a guinea pig. You know what, if I'm gonna break one, I wanna break the Mac one. So quick disassembly tip, after doing this a few times, there are indeed clips on the front left and right that you need to kind of get past when you're opening it up. So you can see how they kind of hang down a little bit. So you need to lift from the back where it's detached, kind of push down the front and give it a little bit of a wiggle to detach it from this other side. See if I can do it more smoothly on this side. Okay, yeah, so you kind of pull down a little bit as you're opening it. But yeah, so there you go. There is the internals of both mice. The battery here just looks like 3 little screws to take it out, and probably, no, it actually just, there's not even a ribbon cable or anything. So yeah, the battery is super easy to replace. That's fantastic. I'm gonna look now and see whether I can identify any differences. I'm gonna look across every single component and see if I can spot anything. Not an expert in this stuff, but we'll try. Let's see. I am just going to try unscrewing the battery in each one because it looks like the main chip inside is directly underneath it. And so I'll get a closer look to see if that gives any sign. Otherwise, I'm not really seeing much so far. I'm really shocked by just how easy it is to replace this battery. It is just a pack here that's got 3 little connectors that go into this little spot here, 3 screws, it lifts straight out. That is very cool to be able to replace that. They also want you to recycle this if you're going to throw this away, so you can recycle the battery and then dispose of the rest of the plastic components. So now let me take the other battery off, and then we'll get a look at the sensors, and then that's pretty much, really as far as we can go. Okay, so I haven't really found anything that is markedly different between the two mice. They look to be identical. They definitely have the same main sensors. They definitely have the exact identical just internal components in every way. That makes sense why they are running the same firmware version. They weigh exactly the same. They're basically the exact same mouse. I think they are the same mouse. The two things that I was able to find that had any sort of differences, and I really think that these are nothing, but you guys let me know if that's not the case. On the boards underneath the switches, they both say 205C. One of them says 5 and one of them says 11. I feel like that's probably just something to do with a batch number or something like that. But if that is a meaningful thing, let me know. And the only other one is this small board next to the MagSpeed scroll wheel, which really also looks to be exactly the same, except that one has some additional markings on it with what looks like it could be a date, like a manufacturing date, something like that, some batch details, maybe a serial number, whereas the other one just has a blank space. But otherwise, they look identical. They have some similar numbers and markings on them. So I think that they're the same. It's just for some reason, one of them has some additional markings. But if you guys, once again, know of anything, any reason why that is not the case, then please let me know. Like I said, I'll include high quality imagery from all of these so that you can take a look. If you spot anything, let me know and I'm happy to investigate. But otherwise, I'm really not seeing much. And that really brings me back to the same conclusion that I had initially with my short video, which is it certainly feels like the MX Master 4 is the correct buy for 99.9% of people because it includes that USB-C receiver, which is just completely excluded on the 4Mac version. If you can get the 4Mac version on a discount and you don't need that receiver, by all means, get the 4Mac. And if for some reason you have a really, really strong affinity for slightly lighter colored switches on the top, then I guess go for it. It's your money. But in terms of just overall value here, I don't think the 4Mac makes any difference. I have not been able to find any definitive evidence anywhere that anything in this is actually optimized for Mac. Now, if you find other reasons or rationale, I'm open to it. I want to be proven wrong because this seems ridiculous for a company to do. But right now, it seems like ridiculous is right. Now, if you enjoyed this slightly different type of video for me, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments whether you liked it or didn't like it. Tearing mice apart is not my strong suit, but if I have to do it in order to try to figure out whether a company is trying to take advantage of people or not, I'm going to do it 10 out of 10 times. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.